Okay, it is 3 o'clock Eastern time. We have a lot to cover on this webinar, so we're going to get started right on the dot. So again, welcome everyone to our webinar on affording adoption. My name is David Dodge. I'm the executive editor of Gays with Kids. And so very excited to be doing this one in particular because I know it's a topic top of mind for anyone that's interested in adoption as a path to parenthood for queer men. But just as a little bit of background on Gays with Kids, so we started about 6 years ago, and mostly as an online resource and magazine for by gay and trans men that are interested in becoming fathers or who are already fathers and interested in connecting with others. So you might know us best from our popular Instagram page, which features adorable photos of gay men and their kids, or from some of the news articles and resources that we provide on our website. But so over the last year, what we've really been hearing actually since we launched from a lot of our followers on our Instagram and Facebook and other social pages is that people have had very specific questions about some of the particular challenges that face queer men as they are navigating the very difficult processes to parenthood that are available to us. I don't have to tell anyone that's on this webinar that there are a lot of questions that come along with adopting, especially as a queer person, but also the other avenues that are available to us through surrogacy, through foster care, co-parenting arrangements. None of these are easy processes, and we were getting very particular questions about how to best navigate each of them. And while we didn't have the answers then, we do now. We've spent the last year or so reaching out and working very closely with really and truly the leading experts in each of these fields in the areas of adoption, foster care, surrogacy, co-parenting, to bring you not only people that are well-versed in the answers to the questions that we didn't feel equipped to answer before, but also that are people that are have long track records of working with the LGBTQ community. What you'll find as you're navigating this process, especially at the beginning, is that you have a lot of options when it comes to adoption or surrogacy, IVF. But these options are not all created equal, especially in the realm of for LGBTQ people that are interested in these options. So we're very excited to be partnering with people, including the three that you see here today, who very much fit that bill of people that are leading experts in the field of adoption. And that also have, again, very long track records of successfully helping queer men become parents, the LGBTQ competent individuals. So with that, I'm going to introduce my panelists very briefly, and I'm going to let them, when I turn the presentation over to them, give a little bit more detail about who they are and their organizations. But today we're joined by Molly Rampe Thomas, who's the founder of Choice Network, an adoption agency based in Ohio, but they work nationally. We also have Pelaia, who's the manager of the international program and outreach at Spence Chapin, which is based in New York and New Jersey, but also has programs that work internationally. And then Erin McMurtrey, who's the program director of Help Us Adopt, which is a grants program based in New York, but also works nationally. So today we're going to be covering a lot of ground, and just as by way of how this will kind of function, we're going to try to get our presentation in about 30 minutes. You'll notice that you're muted and you're unable to turn your cameras on, so we're doing that just so we can try to get through as much information as possible. But we're really going to save as much time as we can towards the end of this presentation for Q&A. No questions are off limits. You can ask as individualized questions as you want, and our panelists are here to answer them. If we're unable to answer your question for whatever reason, we will get back to you. I'll be repeating our email address multiple times throughout this webinar, which is dads@gayswithkids.com. You should feel free to email us at any point. We will be teaming up with our experts to make sure we get the answers that you want. I'll also say that if you have a question, just as you're hearing us talk and present throughout the course of the webinar, use the Q&A feature that you'll see at the bottom of your screen or the top to start plopping in those questions as soon as they come to you. We'll be going through as much as we can towards the end of the webinar. You can also use the chat function if you prefer to ask them that way. Okay, without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Molly, who's just going to give us kind of a quick overview of the different options available to queer men who are interested in adopting.
Hi guys. Okay, so the adoption pathways, there are many ways that a family can grow through adoption, and then the three most common being domestic infant adoption, which can be done via agency adoption or independent adoption, foster care, and international adoption. And each of these types has its own set of advantages, disadvantages, and necessary steps to complete the process. And then each have very varying fees associated with them as well, which we are going to be going through today. I think that's all for this slide.
Yep, that's great. Okay, so now I'm going to hand it over to Lauren, who's going to walk us through the first kind of route available to adopt a domestic infant in the U.S. Lauren, take it away.
Yeah, sure. So the first option we're speaking about is agency adoption through an adoption organization such as Spence Chapin. I guess I should mention Spence Chapin is an adoption organization. We're located on the Upper East Side in Manhattan, and our domestic and home study services are available to families all across the New York and New Jersey area who live at least within 100 miles of our office. And we're a non-secretarian organization, and we work with all types of families. And so this slide is specifically speaking about domestic adoption and the costs that are associated with that. Of course, these costs will vary depending on the agency that you work with. I can say that at Spence Chapin, so the first two lines are birth mothers living and medical expenses. So different organizations will require that the prospective adoptive parents incur or foot that cost. At Spence Chapin, we do not require that adoptive families foot birth mother expenses, living, medical, that sort of thing. So for Spence Chapin, that would be zero. But again, each adoption organization is different. So as you kind of look through what may be a good fit for your family, just kind of look into the different things associated with that. And also each state has kind of different fees that they need to follow. So depending on where you're living, definitely just work with the agency to understand those fees and what that kind of looks like. And then at the bottom is just a general estimated timeline that you can expect when beginning your adoption process once you're accepted into the program. We say that the home study process generally takes anywhere from 3 to 6 months. And a lot of that depends on, one, how much a family is able to devote to the paperwork, as it can be paperwork heavy, but also there are things that could be outside of our control in terms of obtaining child abuse clearances or criminal clearances that may take an extended period of time. Once the home study is complete, families are then waiting to be matched with a birth family and their child. And that process can take anywhere from 9 months to 2 years. It really just kind of depends on the birth mothers that are coming into the agency and seeking to set up an adoption plan for their child, and then what that family is looking for in an adoptive parent for that child, and the type of characteristics or aspects of a family that they're looking through in profiles to kind of determine what may be a best fit. And then once that placement sort of happens, finalization of the adoption can occur anywhere from 3 to 6 months after the initial placement.
Great, thank you so much, Lauren. Okay, Molly is going to next walk us through the second main option for adopting a newborn in the U.S., which is called independent adoption.
Yeah, and before I do that, I do want to say I actually am presenting on independent adoption, but I also am an agency adoption too. Choice Network, I say, when you Google liberal adoption, it'd be my prayer that Choice Network pops up. But I'm going to present on independent adoption today. The difference really between agency adoption and independent adoption is that in an agency adoption, the agency is really handling your plan from beginning to end. And we're really tasked with helping you to find the pregnant person who chooses you. With independent adoption, that is actually you would normally advertise, and you would it would be sort of up to you to find your own match. So the expenses are going to look a lot the same that Lauren talked about. One thing I was going to say about medical expenses, you see 0 to 10,000 because 0 is when a birth mother has Medicaid and Medicaid, and then 10 could be if you're paying co-pays or things like that if she has private insurance. So I was just going to mention that as far as birth mom living or medical expenses, sorry. But then here you're going to see agency fees are going to be lower. So the home study and post-placement support would be considered agency fees, but you're going to see high advertising fees and attorney fees here. So the independent adoption, you're not working directly. Your direct partner is not an agency, rather it's an attorney. And the process for this is going to look a lot the same as the agency adoption. It's a 1 to 2 year process. No matter what, whether you work with an agency or independently, you're still going to have to get the home study. You're still going to have to do the post-placement visits and all of that. So the process itself looks a lot the same. It's just the fees are broken down differently.
Fantastic. Thank you, Mom.
David, I can just say one thing.
Sure.
I will say that, and Lauren probably would agree, there are a ton of benefits to agency adoption over independent adoption. We're not here to like smash one way or the other, but I would just really, really tell families to spend a lot of time researching that. Agencies, especially the ones that you're going to find on Gays with Kids, they are centering birth parents, and that is really important in the process. You want to have matches where the person who has chosen you has peace in their heart, and that is a hard role. And sometimes it's my fear with independent adoption that they're not getting the love that they deserve in the process. So I just want you to be thinking about that. We'll be talking about it in other webinars, but I just wanted to quickly throw that out there. But there are great attorneys out there. I don't want to say that, but agencies do offer, their specialty is this work. And so just make sure that you're paying close attention to that as you're making your decision.
Great. Thank you so much, Molly. So for some of the people that are just joining us a little bit late, you are attending our webinar on affording adoption. We are about halfway through our presentation. So, and again, for anyone that is hearing these facts fly by and are like, oh wait, I have a ton of questions about them, please feel free to start asking those questions as soon as they come to you using our Q&A feature. Again, there's no too specific question that you can ask. Feel free to start plopping those in right away, and we'll just start getting through them as soon as we can at the end of the presentation. Okay, so we're going to hand it back over to Lauren, who's going to talk about international adoption as the next option.
Sure. So international adoption is slightly different than domestic in the sense that we're working with a foreign country, of course. And so the different eligibility requirements for prospective adoptive parents are set by that country. So currently Spence Chapin works in Bulgaria, Colombia, and South Africa. And at this time, Colombia and South Africa are open to same-sex couples and individuals within the LGBTQIA community adopting, and are more than welcoming to those individuals as well. So with the outlines here of the prices, you'll see the home study fees and why those fees might be, a little greater. Typically in international adoption, the wait period tends to be a little longer. So it's likely that you're getting, a regular home study and then having to update that home study to keep it current and up to date with different standards set forth by U.S. immigration. So those fees kind of vary depending what type of program you're in, how long the wait time is, that sort of thing. Professional service fees would be the fees set forth by the agency or the primary provider that you're working with, so the organization whose country program you are hoping to adopt from. And those fees are related to various aspects of a family's process. At Spence Chapin, the professional service fees go towards trainings that we set forth for our prospective adoptive parents, assistance throughout the paperwork process, and that sort of thing. There are different fees for post-placement once a family returns home, and then of course fees for U.S. immigration and various visa documents that your child might need as you're preparing for the process. For countries that English is not the primary language spoken, there are translation fees for a family's dossier, and that's kind of your big packet of paperwork that's going to the country. So there's translation for those fees that a family would incur. And then, each of the foreign supervised providers that we work with have different fees associated with the program, as well as travel costs. And so obviously that range is very, very large. Again, it kind of depends on where you're adopting from. Like I said, travel fees are associated. So what do the travel fees look like to that country of origin? Of course, they differ depending on where you are in the US. But it really it varies in a lot of ways. And again, the placement time and length of the whole process can take anywhere from 1 to 5 years. And a lot of that just kind of depends on the needs that you as a prospective adoptive parent are open to in parenting a child, what the characteristics and children in that country and the needs that they present with are at that time. So it really is a wide range. And, here at Spence Chapin and any organization that has an international program is kind of happy to walk you through what that looks like and what might be a best fit for your family.
Awesome. Thank you, Lauren. Okay, so the next option that we have to discuss is adopting through the foster care system, which I'm going to go through very briefly because we're going to have a whole other webinar series dedicated to foster care specifically and the option to become a father through this means. So foster care is a very different process from the other options you've just heard when it comes to expenses, in that it is free to low cost for adopting through children that are part of the child welfare system. So the costs cover that are associated with your home study, with all the other different options that that Molly and Lauren, are the expenses that Molly and Lauren touched on, are all going to be covered at the end of the process for the most part. And then once you have adopted through the foster care system, it also does come with a monthly stipend that can range anywhere from $300 to upwards of $1,000 to help offset the cost of child rearing. And this is, this is due to the adoptive parents bringing a child into your home that is often has a variety of different special needs. So this is it is a slightly different system than domestic and international adoption. And typically the children that are available for adoption are going to be slightly older. The average age for children in the foster care system is, I think, 6 to 8. And often there's children will come in sibling groups as well. So if that's something that's interesting to you, that is a good avenue to be exploring. But since this webinar is specific about the costs of adopting, the main thing to note in foster care is that it comes with resources that the other paths don't have necessarily, and that it is free to low cost. So, and again, I will encourage you to stay tuned for future webinars on this topic, where we're going to have a panel of foster care experts that can walk us through this in a lot more detail. Okay, next, I'm going to hand it over to Erin, who is with Help Us Adopt, and she's going to walk us through some options for offsetting the costs associated with adopting in, domestically and internationally. Oh, you're muted, Erin.
Just to jump in really quickly to the ones that are listed here, there is the federal adoption tax credit. So this is a credit, not a refund, just a quick thing to note about it. So while it can be applied to reduce your tax liability, you won't receive a refund for any excess, but it can continue to be applied for up to 5 years after your adoption. And it can help with just a wide range of different types of expenses, even including things like travel costs, of course, agency fees, lawyer fees, court costs, things like that. Employer benefits, in terms of the actual monetary reimbursement, it's usually a reimbursement after you've completed the adoption, but that ranges a lot depending on what your actual company is. We've seen applicants who might receive anything from, even just $1,000 in reimbursements up to $25,000 from some of the leading companies in the U.S. In terms of loans, these are great to use in conjunction with the federal adoption tax credit, so you can apply the tax credit to help pay off these loans in a lot of cases. You can take out loans directly for adoption. Some are offered through nonprofit organizations with reduced or low fees, low interest, even no interest in some cases. But many people also take out other types of loans, so a home equity line of credit. Some people put them on, take out a new credit card, put some fees on the credit card with a zero interest balance. There's a lot of options. And then agencies do offer sliding fees, so some agencies will give you a reduced fee just based on your personal income. So it's good, even if you see that an average adoption with one agency might be in the $40,000 range, that doesn't mean that yours wouldn't be less than that based on your income. And then crowdfunding, a lot of options there as well. GoFundMe being the most obvious. Many people do their fundraising through GoFundMe, but there's also a lot of smaller organizations out there that offer things like puzzle fundraisers or help out with providing t-shirts for t-shirt fundraisers, things like that. Those are not going to get you the full way there, but they can be a sizable chunk depending on your own network. And then of course there's grants, which is what we do. Again, a lot of options out there. They go as low as 500, and then up to, we offer 15,000. And each grant organization has different requirements and eligibility restrictions that vary from organization to organization.
Great. And now we'll let you go a little bit deeper into your own grant program, Erin.
Right. So just to tell you a little about the background, we were founded in 2007 after our founder, Becky Fawcett, adopted her son. She wanted to find a grant organization to donate to, but she found that the ones that existed at that time were too restrict in terms of eligibility requirements. Mainly, they were almost solely religiously based. They only allowed couples, very few single grants, even now. And then they also often did not allow LGBT families to apply. So she didn't like that, decided to help us adopt. And so since then, wonderfully, more organizations have begun accepting applications from LGBT families, but a lot do remain religiously based. And if you are single and hoping to adopt, that's really not something that's offered by most organizations. We award larger grants than most organizations. Our average is about 10,000 and our largest is 15. There are other organizations that offer up to that, but their average grant tends to be more like 3,000. It's difficult, I would say, to fully fund your adoption using grants. They can help to take a chunk out of it, but they aren't going to get you the full way there. So you do need to take a look at your finances and see, are you 10,000 off or are you, almost the full 40? And I think if you're closer to the full 40, it's going to be hard to fund it entirely with grants. In terms of our application process, we are fairly straightforward. It's an online application, and I'd say the questions themselves take about less than an hour. But then there is an additional supplemental personal statement, which is you could take as much time as you want on it. It should be about 1 to 2 typewritten pages, and that just tells us a lot about you and your family and why you want to adopt. Ours, as with I would bet any other grant organization, the more emotion that you can put into the personal statement, the better off you're going to do. I know it can be difficult to put those sorts of things in writing, but it's really, if you can make a connection with the people who are making the decision, you're gonna do well. So in addition to the personal statement, the questions, which include just things about basic your adoption, investments, your profession, things like that. We ask that you submit a copy of your taxes. And then the last main thing is a copy of your home study. So you do, for most grant organizations, need to be home study complete by the time that you apply. For our organization, I do recommend that you apply as soon as you have your home study complete. Some organizations want you to be matched, but a lot of times, if you are matched quickly and the child is born, within the next week, that doesn't fit within our timeline. We will only give a grant if the child has not been born and placed in the home yet. There are some exceptions to that if the child is coming out of foster care, but it's not common. So definitely, once the home study is done, go ahead and submit. In terms of preferences, we do have some preferences for applicants. We give consideration to families that haven't had the opportunity to be parents yet. We certainly do give a lot of grants to people who already have kids, but it is a consideration. We do give consideration to LGBT, non-religious, single families, just because there are fewer options out there for them. So we feel it's important to really make a commitment to providing grants to those types of families. And then if you have been through hardship with regards to the adoption, so you've experienced failed adoptions, that's a very good thing to include in the application. It's certainly something that we take into account. And then beyond that, especially if you're adopting a sibling group or if you're adopting a child with special needs, that's something we consider as well. In terms of income, that's the last main thing. And it is something I should talk about. We accept applications from any income range, but it's compared against other applicants from that cycle. So if I would say if you're well over $120,000 in household income, it's going to be difficult to get a grant from us or from almost any other grant organization. There are very few that don't take income into account. We do try to take other things into account as well, like cost of living and student loan debt, but it's difficult to offset that fully when you're comparing a family with another family who makes, $50,000 a year somewhere else. And then, yeah, that's about it.
Awesome. Thank you for that overview, Erin. So I'll also just do a quick shout out to Help Us Adopt, because again, they were for a long time, I think, the only real opportunity for queer men who were interested in getting some grant money to help offset their adoption. Becky Fawcett, the founder, has been doing this work for a long time, and has been begging us to try to help her get more applicants from the queer community. So we're very excited to have them on this webinar. We want more gay, bi, and trans men to know about this option, and we hope that if you are eligible, that you'll apply. Okay, so thank you everyone for running through the cost of adoption in under 30 minutes. That was impressive. So again, the rest of this webinar is going to be dedicated to Q&A. We're starting to get some questions in. Again, you don't have to limit your questions to affording adoption. It can be anything about the adoption process. All three of the women here are very well versed in the entire adoption process. But I will also just say that this is, if you missed my beginning intro, that this is one of many other webinars that we're going to be doing on the subject of adoption that we're rolling out basically on a weekly basis from here on out. We also have a brand new curriculum that we have created around the adoption process on our website, gayswithkids.com. You can go check that out. That covers a lot of this information and a lot more. But since this one is specific to affording adoption, we're going to just jump right in. And again, feel free to keep the Q&A coming in either the Q&A function that you should see at the top or the bottom of your screen, or you can chat us privately if you prefer to do it that way. So the first question is about so let's see here. So does anyone know if the Canadian system is very different from the system in the US? I guess let's just start with domestic infant adoption. Molly, if you know how much it differs there.
Lauren might be better with that one. I don't really know much about the Canadian system, sorry.
No worries.
I'm not sure either. I'm sorry as well.
I would say, Rob, if you can email us again at dads@gayswithkids.com, we will follow up with you and see if we can connect you to someone in Canada that can answer that question a little bit better than we just did. Okay, so Derek wants to know, if you don't pay for the birth mother's expenses, how do those get covered? I assume this is directed to you, Lauren, when you were talking about the fee structure. So he has seen other agencies charging for these expenses. So again, I guess this would be a great opportunity just to kind of talk about how agencies approach this a little bit differently, how it works at Spence, and then maybe Molly, you can talk about how it works at Choice.
Yeah, so at Spence Chapin, we have an entire birth parent department who works with families once they reach out to us and are considering options counseling or just planning for maybe what they would like to do for their pregnancy. So at Spence Chapin, all of those costs that a birth mother, birth parent could incur throughout the pregnancy, we would foot the cost of that. So those are not incurred to families. And a lot of that does have to do with, while a birth family is trying to figure out what might be the best plan for them at this point in their life. They could, end up parenting at the end of their options counseling. And we also at Spence Chapin have volunteers who are interim care providers who will provide care for the child while the birth family is deciding kind of what is the best choice. And so again, at Spence Chapin, since a family might not be matched with with a child and continue on in parenting that child, that is why we kind of foot the cost while the birth family is in the midst of options counseling and just kind of figuring out what might be the best pathway for them. I do know with other domestic agencies, and Molly, you can feel free to speak on this as well, but sometimes if adoptive parents are required to foot and pay those expenses, that if the birth parent does decide to parent in the end of it, those are non-refundable. Is that correct?
I think in many agencies, and so it's actually a really great question to be asking agencies. Our process looks a lot like Lawrence and Spence Chapin's, except for you are billed for the baby you take home. So the birth mother living expenses that are tied to your birth mother, you would be charged for them. But for us, we pay all of those expenses up front, and then that is part of your final bill with us. So if you're with us and a birth mother decides to parent, that is a hit to sort of our budget and not your budget. And also that's a way for us to be able to help women to parent their children, to help them to have no pressure in their deciding. So our families do pay our birth mother living expenses. It's amazing that Spence does it, and crazy that you're able to have budgets like that. But yeah, our families on average are paying anywhere from $0 to $5,000, just like was on the sheet. But again, I think just a really important part is that's a great question to ask agencies that you're considering, because when I first started my company, so many families were really upset. The thing they were most upset about were failed matches and just spending like $9,000 to $12,000 in living expenses before they even were matched with the birth mother who placed with them. So it's an important thing to to know.
Great. Thank you both so much. Hopefully that answered your question, Derek. Let us know. You can re-ask the question if it did not. Okay, so these next, I'm going to combine two of these around international adoption, Lauren. The first is Derek has heard that international adoption is extremely limited for LGBT people. Is that true? And if not, where are places that queer people are able to adopt? And then another question is specific to the South Africa program that you run, and what kind of requirements or restrictions are involved for LGBT people there.
Sure. Yeah, those are all really great questions. So as I mentioned earlier, countries kind of do have the right and eligibility, or the right to set forth eligibility requirements for prospective adoptive parents. And so it certainly can be limited, but the two programs that we work with, Colombia and South Africa, are both open to LGBTQ families and parents adopting. We've had a number of families successfully adopt through both of those programs. And so for South Africa, there aren't necessarily any type of eligibility requirements solely related to one sexual identity or that sort of thing. There is not a marriage requirement even, so couples do not need to be legally married to adopt from South Africa or Colombia. There is just kind of a cohabitation requirement of at least 2 years. So that's something to keep in mind. And then also in terms of just eligibility requirements, there's just certain age parameters that each of the countries set forward. So for South Africa specifically, they do ask that prospective adoptive parents are between the oldest age that they would consider would be 48 years old for the prospective adoptive parent. Of course, we've had families adopt who are, above that age. It's kind of assessed on a case-by-case basis, but that's typically the age range. And then for South Africa, and specifically, one of the two requirements that we have is that families are open to one of the two main needs that we see in children needing permanent families through that country, and those are a diagnosis of HIV positive or what's called kind of an unpredictable developmental delay. So that can mean anything from needing certain types of supplemental supports like speech therapy or occupational therapy upon returning home, or it could require some more lifelong care. And so those are kind of the eligibility requirements. And I would say that's across the board for a lot of intercountry adoption. It's more related to needs of the children in country and what needs families need to be open to, and then age for prospective adoptive parents as well.
Great, thank you so much. And so Lauren, just while we're on the subject, I know you have the 3 programs that you work with internationally. Are you aware of other programs that exist that if people had like a specific country in mind that they were interested in adopting from as a LGBT person? Is that even a possibility, or would you really people work through a program like yours?
I'm trying to think, just based off of like home studies that we've done for families living in New York who aren't necessarily adopting through one of our 3. And off the top of my head, I can't think of any personally. Colombia and South Africa are the ones that I'm most familiar with. That's not to say that there aren't other countries who are open, but I'm not sure.
Okay. Thank you so much. Okay, this next question is about foster care. And wondering if there's a guarantee that you're able to adopt through the foster care system. So I can answer this one. The foster care system, there's about 400,000 children in the foster care system currently. And the primary goal of foster care, and so this is something that's important to know if you're interested in adopting through foster care, is to reunite children with their biological or first families. So when you go through the foster care system, become a foster care parent, you need to have that front of mind, even if you do hope to ultimately use the foster care system as a way to become a father. With that said, I think it's about a quarter of the children in foster care have been what's called legally freed for adoption. So these are children that have already had their legal ties separated from their biological parents and are eligible for adoption. And if you're working with a certified foster care agency, you can request to only have those sorts of placements. That might prolong the amount of time that you'll be in the foster care system waiting to adopt. But that is, it is something that you can request, I think, in most instances. Hopefully that answered your question. If not, please email us, dads@gayswithkids.com, and I can connect you directly to one of our foster care experts that can go into more detail there. Okay, so we're getting a lot of great questions. I am going to prioritize ones that are specific to cost and affording adoption, because again, we have a lot of other webinars that are going to talk about a lot of this other stuff. So this one is tangential to what it takes to become an adoptive parent. Do I need to own a house instead of renting in order to satisfy the requirements of a home study? Molly, you want to take that?
I think in most states, I definitely in Ohio, it's fine for you to be able to just rent. And we have families all over that are renting. So I don't believe it's a requirement. It would be something that you want to check with the agency that you're working with. But I think renting is just fine. If you are going to be adopting through the foster care system, they have bedroom requirements a little more strict than we do as agencies. But I would say go for it.
Great. Anything you'd add, Lauren? Does that sound about right to you? Yeah.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Okay, great. Okay, so Erin, for helpusadopt.org on the grants, is this only open to U.S. citizens? You're muted again, sorry.
Sorry about that. At least one applicant needs to be a U.S. citizen, but both parents do not. Okay.
Okay. So if you are married and are looking at grants and loans, do you have to use the combined household income, or can you do only one of the couple's income to apply for the loan or the grant? Erin, if you want to take that one too.
If you're applying for a grant with us, you need to use the full household income. That would, I would guess, be the case with most loans as well, just in order to be approved for any type of home equity line of credit or things like that. A lot of times you'll need to have a good idea of what the full household income is. If you can get something like that, like a credit card line by yourself, yes, you wouldn't need to use both parents, but anything that's going to be subsidized or low interest, you usually need to know the full household income.
Great. Awesome. Okay, so because we are getting a lot of questions about the home study, well, we might as well just get a quick overview of what the home study process entails. And because this is around cost, what kind of costs are associated with it, and things that people can do to prepare for it. Why don't we have both Molly and Lauren answer this if you want to take it first, Molly?
Okay, I was actually just typing in an answer to the person who had asked the question. So yeah, the home study is a series of documents, trainings, and interviews that you would do with an adoption assessor. It's required in every single state in order to adopt. Sort of what the assessor is going to be reviewing is your medical background, your financial background, your home, the safety of your actual home, let's see, reference checks, background checks. So yeah, the home study process can take anywhere, I think, from like 2 to 4 months normally. I forget what we noted on the slides, but for Choice Network, it takes anywhere from 2 to 4 months. We work as fast as families do. But yeah, I think that's about it. We talked about the price of the home studies. It really just depends on if you are, for my agency, it's part of my agency fees. I'm sure Spence Chapin's is the same. But if you're doing an independent adoption, I think the fee could be anywhere from $2,500 to $7,500. Again, I don't remember what's on the slide, so sorry if I'm quoting that wrong. I'm sort of like thinking of the fees that we have seen. So Yeah, I think that's about it, unless Lauren, you have anything to add?
Yeah, I was just thinking, agree, check with the agency that you're planning on working with for their specific fees, but just other like additional fees for the home study that I could think of. So for intercountry adoption, there are typically certain webinars that families are required to complete and trainings for their home study process. And those are typically paid through a third-party website such as Adoption Learning Partners or Creating a Family. They're like $20 to $30 per training. So that's like just a potential anticipated cost. Sometimes, depending on where you live, certain states do have a small fee for child abuse clearances. It depends. But again, just kind of checking into that. But those are just more, additional costs that you might not think of up front.
Great, thank you. And I'll just reiterate in the instance of foster care that the cost of doing your home study is covered by the state in that instance. And then we do have a question here about whether if you are certified through, if you complete a home study that's intended to be for foster care, does that carry over to a domestic infant adoption clearance as well? Is it the same process, I guess? Molly, do you want to take it?
I would just say it's called foster to adopt, and any foster care agency is going to have you do that so that you would be eligible if you wanted to move forward with adopting a child if they became legally available for adoption. And the only difference I would say in a home study for foster care is there's usually a lot more training involved with the foster care system because of the potential trauma of the children that you would be accepting. But again, nothing should deter a family from checking out the foster care system as they're considering adoption.
Great. Okay, so this is an interesting one. Are there special considerations for adopting an Indigenous or Native child? So that's the first part of this question. And the second is if you're interested in open adoption. So why don't we take the first one first, because I do know that there is a separate system in place for adopting Indigenous children. Is that right? Lauren, you want to take that?
No, I'm actually not familiar with that, so go ahead.
Okay, all right, Molly, do you know a little bit more about that?
Well, there's the Indian Child Welfare Act is one thing that agencies have to be paying attention to. So if a birth mother does fit the definition of what we call ICWA, Indian Child Welfare Act, then we would have to search their tribe and notify the tribes. So there's extra steps that have to be taken. That would be found out when we are doing the history of the birth mother and finding out information about her. So there are extra steps that have to be taken if they meet the criteria.
Great.
But families, there's not extra steps for families. It would just be that it could stop the adoption from happening.
Right. Okay. Great. Once then the second part of that was special considerations for open adoption. So if you want to take that one too, Molly.
I would say the only consideration is open adoption. Any great agency is going to really, open adoption is going to be very important to them. It's sort of the only way. Again, we're going to be doing a lot of webinars regarding adoption, and you're going to see our heart for open adoption. I think the stat is 85%, but for us, it's more like 95% or more of birth mothers want open adoption. Closed adoption was harmful to children in the past. So we're going to be spending a ton of time on that. It'll be something that you'll be deeply gaining knowledge on, though, as you begin the process. So don't make it stop you from moving forward, because you're going to learn and you're going to end up wanting an open adoption once you have been educated.
Great. Lauren, you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I completely echo everything that Molly said. We certainly uphold, open adoption plans and find that the majority of birth parents now are hoping for that. And our prospective adoptive parents are open to that as well. And just noting the importance of that for the child as well, and having both parties present in their life.
And so, Erin, I guess in the case of like grants and loans and just ways to offset the costs associated with adoption, is there anything that would impact that if you're looking specifically for an open adoption or not, I guess?
Not so much for open adoptions. I agree that almost all of the people that are applying are with open adoptions these days. And it's something we support as well. In terms of adopting an Indigenous or Native child, we may give it special consideration because it is a more difficult process, and that's something to take into account. I wouldn't say that it would be a large consideration, but just the added difficulty would be something to look at.
Great, thank you.
Can I add one thing really quick? When we have families filling out grants, even with Help Us Adopt, I know takes into consideration keeping siblings together. So sometimes our families talk about how open adoption is keeping their siblings together. It's part of their grant. So I would just think that families should keep that in mind too as they're applying.
Great. Thank you all for that. Okay, so this one is, I think, directed at you, Lauren, at Spence Chapin specifically. Considering your agency works with New Yorkers in the surrounding area, do you provide a list of adoption companies that are in other areas and states that may pair and work well with you guys? I guess, yeah, if you have someone that reach out outside of your area, how do you kind of refer people?
Yeah, absolutely. So I should reiterate that our international programs are open to anyone living across the U.S. You don't have to be living in the New York or New Jersey area. But if you do reach out to us and you're living in the New York area and hoping to adopt maybe from a country program that Spence Chapin does not offer, we have, a variety, a list, so to speak, of agencies that families have used in the past who, maybe live in California but are adopting through our South Africa program. So just over the years, we've kind of developed rapport with a number of organizations across the U.S. that we'd be happy to kind of point you in the direction of, individuals who people have worked with in the past.
Great, thank you. And I'll just make a plug again. Over the years that Gays with Kids has been around, we are working very closely with a very small group of adoption agencies intentionally, and that includes Choice and Spence Chapin. Again, these are organizations that have proven themselves to be not only friendly to the LGBTQ community, but competent in the different needs that queer men and women have when they're trying to adopt through these processes. So I would go check out our partner registry on gayswithkids.com. Check out the industry partners. And again, Molly's organization does work nationally, Choice Network in Ohio, as do a couple of the other partners that we're working with. So if you want just an easy cheat sheet to get, a couple recommendations, you can also go there. But I'm sure, Molly, you have ways that you recommend people as well that might not be a good fit for Choice for whatever reason.
Yeah, we can homestead the Ohio families. So we're based in Ohio, but we can work with families nationwide who have active home studies. So we use the Human Rights Campaign, their website, for innovative and inclusive agencies. So we direct families a lot of times who may be coming from another state but still want to work with Choice Network. We'll connect them with the HRC approved agency in their state. And their link is not working right now, but going to HRC's site and searching agencies is a great place too, but obviously Gays with Kids is good too.
Yes, absolutely. And I guess we should have mentioned this at the outset, that the process of becoming certified with HRC is not an easy task. They really do vet the organizations that are on their all children, all families list very closely and thoroughly. It's something I think you have to continually do. And both Spence Chapin and Choice have definitely gone through that process. Okay, so let's see. So Joseph, this question's about whether you missed the overview that we did of costs in the adoption process. So we're recording this and we went through it in detail earlier in the webinar, but I'll make sure to get you the slides and the presentation here so you can see that. And if we have some time towards the end, we can kind of do another very quick overview of the cost, if that's okay. So we have a question about whether or not people with HIV can adopt, or if it impacts their prospects at all, I guess, when being matched with a birth family. Molly, do you want to take that first?
Not at all. HIV positive, many of our families are, and it's not an issue at all.
Great, nice and simple. How about you, Lauren?
Yeah, I completely agree. I will say for inter-country adoption, there are certain medical or mental health diagnoses that the country, may require a pre-screen for or may consider a prospective adoptive parent ineligible. South Africa and Colombia are not one of them for that specific diagnosis.
How about for grants and loans or those sorts of opportunities, Erin? Is there anything about being HIV positive that would complicate the process?
No, if anything, it would be just an added consideration in their favor, just because it may have made the adoption process more difficult, although it sounds like that's not the case at these agencies. So yeah.
Sure, great. Okay, so on agencies' websites, Derek has noticed ads on helping to put together a book or a web presence. Are there extra costs for doing this, and is it included in the agency fee? And I guess if you could both kind of describe a little bit what he's talking about here. Molly, we'll start with you.
It's included in our agency fee. But I do know many agencies partner with profile sites to build your profile. Our profiles are all electronic. We don't do any sort of paper profiles, sort of consider them old school, but sorry if Spence Chapin does. It's all electronic for us. We text profiles to pregnant people considering adoption all the time.
Great. Lauren, anything yet?
Yeah, that's considered or included in our agency fee as well. And we do both. Most of our matches come through our online website, so our electronic profiles. We certainly have situations where maybe one of our birth parent social workers will receive a call from someone who is in labor and wanting to create an adoption plan. And so they'll quickly grab some physical profiles that we have and take them to the hospital. So we do both.
So this is probably a good place to reiterate that we went over this in the presentation as well, but so we have two representatives from agencies on this webinar. We don't have anyone representing the independent adoption process, which is what you would do just with the help of a lawyer. And this is where those sorts of extra expenses might come in, is that you are then responsible for paying for the website that you're going to be advertising your family on, and any other sort of extra ways that you're going to try to reach out to families. Is that right, Molly and Lauren? Okay. Okay, fantastic. So this is another great question. Is there anything impacting a single gay man's adoption process, or anything you guys take into account if it's just a single person? Molly, no?
No, I think any Gay with Kids agency and any HRC agency is going to take single dads as seriously as married couples, and in fact, our pregnant people love our single dads.
Fantastic. Anything you'd add to that, Lauren?
Yeah, exactly the same. We haven't really seen any barriers.
And then Erin, maybe this is a place where you can reiterate how Help Us Adopt approaches single parents.
Yeah, I think that we would give special consideration to that person just because it is a lot more difficult to find a grant that's willing to consider single applicants.
And this is again why Help Us Adopt is so great, because so few places do this, and like intentionally trying to help LGBT and single parents. So again, definitely give them a look up if you have not yet. Okay, so I guess this is related back to the question about tribal adoptions. So Natalie's wondering if you were a tribal member, are there extra expenses to navigating the process that you were talking about, Molly?
I don't think there would be extra expenses, not as for the tribal members. There could be extra attorney fees, but no, I would say no.
Okay, great. Nice and easy. Okay, so someone is trying to figure out how to decide what adoption agency to pick. So we actually literally just did this webinar last week. So first of all, I'd say we'll try to get you the recording so you can see some tips that adoption professionals will provide. But why don't we take a second just to see what all three of you would suggest as to ways that you can decide on finding an agency to work with. We'll just go down, starting with you, Molly.
I think, again, start with Gays with Kids and thoroughly check out their site. I would say next, go to HRC, check out their site. You want agencies that are loud and proud of their love and inclusivity of all families. I think that is really what is most important. And then also that they're centering birth mothers. So you just want to see that they care tremendously for birth mothers and for you.
Thank you. Lauren?
Yeah, I would agree with everything that Molly had just said. And also just once you kind of identify agencies that you're maybe interested in learning a little bit more about, reach out to them and set up a time to speak, over the phone or video call, now that we're all doing that with the pandemic. But that can be really helpful. I know I have so many calls a week with just people who are in the beginning of their adoption stages who are just trying to gather more information and see what may be a best fit. So many organizations are open to having those conversations. I mean, it's always nice to just hear from someone there and kind of get your feel of the agency that way.
Great, thank you. And so I know people are coming to you, Erin, but usually by the time they are deeper into the process. But I'm sure you also get plenty of people that come and ask you for advice. So anything you would suggest to people that are trying to make a decision?
We do actually have an adoption professionals council that we've started with in the last couple of years. So it is made up of different agencies, lawyers, and also different types of adoption professionals, including consultants as well, who support our mission and believe that it's important to have an equality-based grant. So I definitely recommend that you take a look at our website. It's up there as well.
So and I guess I'll just give a little bit more context for why these resources are really important, especially for queer people that are interested in becoming a father through adoption. Is that there are, states across the country are now passing what are called so-called religious freedom bills, which make it legal to discriminate against LGBT people who are interested in becoming adoptive or foster parents. These same laws are being used to discriminate against single people. That said, it's still legal to adopt as a gay man or become a foster parent in every state in the country. But not every adoption agency is created equal in this respect. So this is why it does make a lot of sense for you at the outset of the process to check out HRC, check out Gays with Kids. Again, all three of the reps you see here can direct you in the right place as well. But that first step is important to make sure that you're working with the LGBT affirming agency. So thank you for that question. Okay, so let's see. So this is a question from an international family that are, he and his husband are living in the US on a temporary training visa with the intention of moving back to Ireland. So they're interested in starting their adoption journey while they're still in the US though. Are there any restrictions or challenges for doing that? Or how would that work, I guess, if you're not a full US citizen and you're interested in adopting here locally? Molly, do you want to take it first and Lauren?
Yeah. You can adopt locally if you're not a U.S. citizen. You would need to stay in the States until your adoption is finalized. So I'm pretty sure. I mean, you would maybe be able to travel, but if your home study starts, actually your home study is only good in the state that you reside in as well. So we always tell families, like, for example, if they live in Ohio now, but they're considering a move to Michigan, we say wait until you move to Michigan. So I would just want to make sure you had like a 2-year time frame where you're going to be in the States to complete the adoption process. But we have families who, are, part of military and they are traveling. We're able to work around that, but they have to come home for finalization, and someone has to be in the States with the baby.
Right. Great. Anything you'd add, Lauren?
Just for international adoption specifically, so if you're using an organization such as Spence Chapin that's licensed and authorized in the United States, it would be a requirement that if it's a 2-parent household, at least one parent has U.S. citizenship, and that has to do with the Child Citizenship Act. So the child that you are adopting, they gain citizenship through their parents' citizenship. So that is a requirement.
Great. Thank you. So now follow-up for you, Lauren, someone that's interested in your South Africa or Colombia program, and he's wondering if it's open to single parents.
Yes, both of them are. We've had success in both programs.
And I will say that I know that this is kind of an interesting loophole for some queer people that are single that are interested in adopting abroad, is that, if you're not married to someone of the same sex, then that's your sexuality might not necessarily come into play as much. That might actually, you might have other options besides ones that are specifically only open to working with same-sex couples. But again, you'll want to talk to a lawyer much more in depth than I was just able to do there. Okay, so with the 3 minutes that we have left, so again, we have one question about whether the cost is the same. I'm sorry, I'm not sure what that's referring to, but please just quickly email me, dads@gayswithkids.com, and we will try to follow up with that. And then Joseph, your question about the breakdown of the costs, I will send you an article that we have on our website that goes over everything that we went through in this webinar in detail. Again, this is going to be recorded, it has been recorded, so we'll also make sure the recording gets out to all of you so you can refer back to this at your leisure. And so then again, this is, we're about midway through our first round with these webinars. They've been super helpful, I think, so far. And we are going to be doing them on a host of other topics. I think I have a slide up here that talks about the next couple of ones. So again, we are also doing these same sort of webinars for people interested in surrogacy and IVF. We will be rolling out a similar series of webinars around the foster care system and people that are either interested in being a temporary foster parent or adopting through the foster care system. And then we're also going to, this next one, again, which we've reiterated several times on this webinar as well, but ways that you can make sure that you're working with an LGBTQ affirming adoption professional. That one is coming up on October 21st. So if you're not already following us on Gays with Kids on Instagram, please do. We will be pushing out all of the information for all of these webinars and other resources as we're developing them over the next several months. And do please check out our new website, gayswithkids.com, which again has been a labor of love over the last year and is finally now starting to be a robust place where we're centering all of these resources. We really do want to be the place that can kind of walk you through from the minute that you have that idea that you want to be a parent to the end of the process, where we can actually help connect you to an agency or professional that can help you become a dad in the way that you want to. So with that, I'm going to give each of our panelists just a quick second to sign off and let us know how we can get in touch with them if you have further questions for them directly. Go ahead, Molly.
Yes, thank you guys again. Thank you, Erin, for being here. Especially, I loved hearing about Help Us Adopt, and thank you for your work. And my email is molly@choicenetworkadoptions.com, or you can find us on our website at choicenetworkadoptions.com, and you can see all of our social media channels where we, again, are loud and proud for our love for y'all. So thanks for being here today. I loved it.
Lauren?
Yeah, thank you for this opportunity. To learn more about our programs, you can visit spencechapin.org. It's spence-chapin.org. And then you can also reach out to us with any questions about any of our programs at info@spence-chapin.org. And all of that information is on our website. So thank you.
Thank you. And then Erin, if you could also maybe just let people know when your next deadline is.
Yes, our next deadline is December 1st for an award in February. So please do apply. We would love to receive more applications. And you can reach us through our website at helpusadopt.org, easy to remember. You can also send an email to our main email, which is info@helpusadopt.org.
Cool. And again, I'll just reiterate, helpusadopt.org is looking for queer men to apply to their program and give you money to help with the process
Yes.
if you qualify. So please do check them out. We want to make sure that we're connecting queer men to the resources that are available to us, which are unfortunately more limited than for our heterosexual brothers and sisters. Okay, so with that, I'm going to sign us off. Thank you again to Molly, Lauren, and Erin for being here. And please do check us out in a future webinar and check us out on our website. And we hope to see you at a future webinar soon. Thank you all for being here again.